Hello everybody, welcome back to the Kuchi-e Gallery YouTube channel. My name is Eric. Today we're going to be talking about a new topic. I'm not going to be doing a video opening a package this time. Today we're going to talk about conservation. Now most people, when you think conservation, they're thinking about restoring an old masterpiece painting or an oil painting or removing stains from a sheet of print paper or that kind of thing. But there's other levels of conservation that we as collectors and even gallery owners should know. So in today's video, I'm going to be discussing conservation at a low level, which is going to be the filling of holes. So Japanese woodblock prints, as many collectors and dealers know, often have small holes. And this print that we're looking at right here, the subject print, this is a print by Kuniyoshi. It depicts a print of a character in the center here who's committing seppuku, which is ritual suicide. And this is from a play. And the reason I think it's from a play, I'm almost certain of it, is because the central character here has the traditional mie. So you see the eyes are crossed right here. That's called the mie. And the mie is basically signifying the part of a play that whoever the artist was is thinking that that part of the play was the most intense. So it basically signifies the most intense scene. It doesn't signify the crazy part of the scene. A lot of people think it's like a crazy sort of view, and I could see why, because it has this cross-eyed sort of look. But actually it's to signify the most intense portion, probably could be the most emotional, that kind of thing. So it's a level of intensity. Anyway, so I think this is from a play. I'm not sure which play. I didn't do any research on this print, but I did select this print by Kuniyoshi, which actually, from a quick look, you can see it's actually in pretty decent condition. But in any event, if you look up close, you will actually see that there are lots of holes here. So you see all these holes on the lower center. On this sheet, it's the left side of the sheet, and they basically go from here and they run all the way up the side. There's a hole here. There just are holes all over. Now, some of these holes, like this one here, is a binding hole. So this is maybe it's easier to show from the back. I don't know if it is or not. But you can see there's binding holes here. So we have binding holes, which were basically securing a wooden binding block. This is from an album. So these prints that we're looking at today are all from one album, which I purchased, I don't know, many years ago. And it was $5,000. Now, at the time when I bought it, it had a large wooden block running here along this edge. Now, the person who assembled this album of prints, they really overbounded. It had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It had like 10 binding holes. So each of these prints already has 10 binding holes worth of holes. And then on top of that, one of the problems that routinely happens with woodblock prints from Japan is that some sort of an insect, like a moth, I'm imagining, probably, had a worm phase. So in their caterpillar phase, they turn into worms, and one of their favorite meals apparently was, the mulberry paper that they use to make these washi papers, because a lot of woodblock prints come with these holes. You can even see that there's a little trail here, just hopped on here and started eating its way through. And you can't see it because this is, nobody will ever see the first video because I already deleted it. But actually, I made a first video doing the exact same thing I'm doing now, and I did it with the left sheet. So you can actually see here that I've already fixed all the holes right here during my last video. So this gives you a fantastic upfront before and after. So as you're going to see when I'm applying these, the paper becomes somewhat damp and it leaves kind of like a discoloration or a slight color change because the paper is a little bit wet. When it's done, though, you will see that discoloration all but disappears. And that has to do with making sure that the print you're going to work on is from the right period. So I'll discuss the inks a little bit later on. But for now, let's just say that I'm going to do this video today where I show you step by step on what it takes and how to make these repairs for yourself. Now, I want to give a huge disclaimer right at the beginning of this video. I am not an expert and I am not a conservationist. I just learned how to do these on my own. I have read through books. I have a friend named Peter Gilder who owns a gallery called Arts and Designs of Japan in San Francisco. You should go check out his gallery if you want to find some woodblock prints. He always has very fair pricing, in my opinion, and he sometimes offers the most amazing prints. Now, he is like in a semi-retirement at this point, so his offerings are, not what they were 15 years ago when I started this, this collector's life of woodblock prints. He was one of the first collectors, one of the first dealers that I visited. And anyway, he showed me also how to do it. So I've learned from several different people along the way, and I've taken bits and pieces from each one to show you how I do it. So let's get started. So first thing, so I'm going to set this one to the side. So we're only going to work on the right sheet today. So let me set this over here for a moment. So this is the sheet we're going to work on while I'm discussing with you the various steps in doing this. I do want to say that selecting the paper and the print that you're going to work on is crucial. So this print that we're looking at now was probably published in the 1850s, maybe early 1860s, maybe as early as late 40s. I don't know, but it's definitely before 1868. Now, I believe 1868 is the date that the aniline dyes were brought over from Europe to Japan. I think it was so aniline dyes first appeared, I think it was 1868. It might have been 1878, but I do know that those dyes, they were brought over by the Dutch, who were doing, they were basically starting to do all their importing and exporting from Japan at that time. And the aniline dyes, they basically showed up at some point, and that's when those bright red colors appeared. So the red, like this red that you see at the top up here, this is not really what we're talking about. If I put water on this red, it's relatively stable and it shouldn't lose any of the color, and it shouldn't spread. Most importantly, the number one thing you do not want to have happen when you're making any kind of repairs is, like those aniline dyes, the problem is they're very thick and bright. So when you get a brand new print published with the aniline dyes, the Japanese were just really agog. I mean, they were wow for those for sure, because they were brighter. So of course they really liked that, and because it showed up at a time. So let's see. So yeah, I'm trying to read up on it because I don't want to give you guys the wrong dates, but I believe it was 1868 or 1878. And when it showed up, the Japanese embraced it really hardcore. So yeah, it says the 1860s. So let's just say 1868. That's the date I remember. And so it became in popular use from that point. So what you'll notice from 1868 on is some of the prints become very red. Some of them are just overwrought with red. Now, red was a good luck color. I think it had something to do with like New Year's. There was a lot of reasons that the Japanese would use these red colors, and they embrace them. So, but the thing that we as collectors and we as museums and we as dealers have to watch out for is when you buy those prints, if they have been subjected to any kind of water in any way, you are going to get bleeding. And you'll see it often with Yoshitoshi designs. So most often, as with this print, so these two prints right here came from an album that I purchased. I purchased an album that was still complete. And as you might imagine, these prints came side by side. And you can see when I line up the sides right here that the wormage, that's what they call this damage, by the way, wormage. When you see this wormage along the edge, but you can see when I line these up, it's a perfect match. So that worm or worms just ate their way right through the edge of this here. And I don't know how deep it might have gone. It could have gone through all 50 pages, or 100 pages. I don't remember how big the album was, but it might have gone through all of them. I do know that a lot of the prints from this album have wormage damage. I've had to make several repairs. Every one, whether it had wormage or not, had the 10 or whatever binding holes. So you have to seal the binding holes no matter what. So there's at least that part that has to be done. And then in addition, many of them had this sort of thing right here, where there's like 10 or 15 extra holes here. And then there's like one right here. They're just kind of scattered around. So you have to patch those holes. And then, every facing page had the exact same matching holes. You can see right here, see how this print is laying on top here? And you can actually see that when I put this hole on top of the other hole, you can see right through it here. So, it's very, very common to come across this. anyone who deals long-term with Japanese prints, especially ukiyo-e and anything from the ukiyo-e period, especially, and anything that was put in albums are more likely to exhibit these, I think. I am not saying they couldn't have happened. If you just happen to have a stack of them laying around, that could also be the case. But I do know that these are very, very much so susceptible to those worms in Japan. And so oftentimes what happened in my case, because if I'd known about all the damage, I don't know if I still would have bought the album. The album cost me $5,000. So I paid $5,000 for this album that this came from. And the person who sold it to me, I'll use this page as an example. The person who sold it to me, it had a thick binding block down the side right here. It was about 2 inches wide. So it covered this whole section. So as you can imagine, I'm getting an album that has this part covered up, and I'm looking through going, wow, these are amazing. This looks great. And then I unbound it and I took the wood off, and I find this in every single print practically, that the bottom corner has some missing area, this along the edge. And then of course there's like I said, there's like 9 or 10 binding holes, which you really are going to have to fill no matter what. So even if there was no damage for a print like this, which was a triptych, you're going to have to do 30 hole fillings just if there's no damage. So, people that are going to need to do this should be familiar with how to do it. And so I'm going to do a video today outlining how we do this and step by step. And if anybody has any questions, feel free to put them in the margin. You can see right here that the worm on this case had gotten a little bit more ambitious, and they ate through here, 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 and here. This corner is missing. I was able to actually save some of these corners. I don't know if I have this one, but I might. And if I do, I'll show you real quick. Because I keep them and it allows me to reattach them. Oh no, I do have one. So here we go. So that's funny. See, I did keep them for this. So here you go. Here is one of the corners right here. I'm not sure if it's this one or the other side, because obviously they're facing each other. So I'm not sure which one is which. But I did keep some of these little corners that I found that were eaten through so that I could just glue them back on, which obviously would be easier than having to infill the paint, which is what I would normally have to do. This one probably is. No, I don't know if it's from here actually, because it doesn't really fit right. So I don't know. It could be from here. I don't know. I'll have to look around and see if I can find other of those. But anyway, I tried to keep those little things instead of just throwing them away, even though they were loose, because they can definitely come back to save you later. If you find those little things, they're easy to glue back on, and they'll be practically unnoticeable. Most people looking at this print are going to be wowed by all the severed heads hanging around in this tree up here. And it's a dynamic battle scene. I do have the entire 3 sheets of this print, and I'm going to do another conservation video focused on this print specifically, because I'm going to do a before and after. I want people to see that there's definitely a decent amount of damage here from the worms, and I'm going to fix it all so that it can be sold or enjoyed for the future. And that is the reason we need to do this work, by the way. We do this work so that it can be enjoyed in the future or sold if you're a gallery and you need to make repairs. Now, there are different ways of making these repairs. The way I'm going to be showing you all today is going to be based on filling with washi and nori paste. So let's talk about the supplies we're going to need. So the first step is you're going to need a clean set of water. So basically, you want to get a clean jar of water. In this case, I have tap water. It's fine. The tap water where I live is a-okay. If you want to be extra about it, you probably could do diluted, distilled water, or, something. I don't think it's necessary, honestly, because it's just, you're using not that much water to begin with, and I don't think it's going to make any difference in how well the attachment turns out. So I don't think there's that much of a benefit. So we're going to need the clean water source. We're going to need a place to put our paste here, and we're going to be doing a little bit of dilution, which is like a little bit of mixing. So we're going to need the water and the nori paste, but we have the water in our cup here, our clean water. We have our mixing tray, and then we're going to need a very clean. This one I don't believe has ever been used, so I chose to use this clean white brush because if it had any extra watercolor from doing painting, I'm an artist, so I do have paint brushes that I use. If I had a teeny bit of red in here or a teeny bit of green or blue or whatever, as soon as I start mixing up my nori paste with the water, anything in this brush is going to transfer right into the nori paste. And it's just a pain. Sometimes you don't notice it until a little later on, and you're like, oh, darn, there was actually some yellow in that brush. And now all the things you just brushed onto your print have a tiny bit of yellow or red or orange or whatever mixed into them. And you don't want that. By the same token, this dish has 4 little tray holes, spots. If I use this one, well, this yellow, I mean, this thing has been washed in the sink over and over again. However, you can clearly see the yellow did not fully come out of this thing. I would never choose to use this for my mixing of the nori paste in the water because some of this yellow could easily transfer into the paste. So I'm going to use the clean one here, which is why I leave this one clean at all times. And I use it to mix, and then I use a brand new clean brush. So we have our brush, we have our water, we have our tray, and the next thing we're going to need is the nori print. And we have our print. Sorry, we have our print, our water, our tray, and the next thing is going to be the nori paste. Now, there are several brands of nori paste out in the market. This one is from Japan. It's called Yamato. It's called washi glue. I'm not sure if the other one is called glue or paste. No, it's called paste. Most people call it nori paste, but for some reason they call this nori glue or washi glue, but it is nori paste glue. So it's the same product, but it's a little bit different. I'll just show you here. It's very glue-like. It is more glue-like than the nori brand. Now, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with it. These things have the exact same reviews on Amazon. They both get a 4.4 stars, I think. So, and they're priced similarly. This jar of Yamato, I think, is like $10 or $11. And the other brand we're going to look at is called Nori. I tend to use Nori most regularly. It dilutes very well. And like I said, the other one is just a little bit more glue-like. This one is more paste-like, I guess, and maybe that's why it must be prepared differently. But this one still has a little bit of a cover on it, so you can't quite see it. But it's more pasty, like it's a little bit thicker. And because of that, I dilute it. Now on Amazon, you can buy a large nori paste, probably the same size as this, maybe even a little bit larger, for like $11. It might be, maybe it's humongous, I don't know. I know that children's nori paste comes in these kind of like blue and bright colored tubes. You'll see them on Amazon as well. Those are just as good, to be honest. I've used those as well. And they used to sell them at Daiso America. I don't know if you guys are familiar with the store Daiso, but Daiso is like a Japanese store that we have here. We have several in the Bay Area near San Francisco where I live. Excuse me. And so you are able to buy those children's nori paste. They come in like a bright blue tube, and they have the same product. You just dilute it down, which I'll be showing you in a minute. For this process of attaching, small pieces of washi to repair these holes, I dilute it quite a lot. Now, I don't know if others do this or not. Some people may use it straight. I think it's a little too thick to easily use straight. What I don't want is blobs of glue all over the back or around the holes or, God forbid, in the paint, or, you know what I mean? I don't want it to be like goopy and chunky. I'm not interested in that, but I do think that sometimes nori paste can be chunky. Now, like I said, that large bottle on Amazon is $10 or $11. Unless you're doing large surfaces, I cannot imagine how long it would take you to use up a whole bottle like that. I have bought several of these, and the one I'm using currently is this one. I've had this for probably 5 years, same brand as the other brand. I bought this at a local art supply store. I think it's like $5 or $6 or $7. But as you can see, it kind of separates out. Like I was saying, it's kind of chunky. I don't know if that's just an age thing, but see, this one does look more like paste. So maybe the Yamato is more like glue because it's done in a different way that makes it more glue and goopy-like. Anyway, this one is the nori paste I'm going to be using, and I just dilute it. So what I typically do is I put a little water in here, shake it up, I mix it around. I try to get it to take off all the parts I want of this, all the properties I want, which is to say, by the way, there's a little plug in these in case you are trying to figure out why your glue doesn't come out. There's a little plastic plug in here, but I'm just going to try and take off some of this nori liquid that I've created. I don't really want the chunks, and I don't need the chunks. So I'm just going to drip out some of this. This is how I do it. Look, I don't know how other people do it, but this is how I do it, and it works for me pretty well. So I'm only giving you guys advice on how I do this. Again, I think I probably said this already, but I'll say it again. I am not an expert and I'm not a conservationist. I'm giving you a layman's idea of how to do this. And I'm sure a lot of conservationists are going to come on and be like, oh my God, look what he's doing. It's horrible. It's wrong. It's whatever. Maybe that'll be the case. I don't know. I watch a lot of their videos and I love watching those. But what you'll notice is they're often done by people that have these, full, full studios set up with vacuum tables and, all this kind of stuff. I mean, I can't afford to do that kind of stuff for being a collector. And while I will open a gallery at some point, probably to sell the prints that I don't want to keep anymore, or so I can fund other purchases more likely. That's the reason I would want to open an art gallery, because I like to be able to buy more prints, and I'm not a wealthy person. So having the ability to buy things is why I do it. I kind of trade upward, I guess you'd say. So I like to buy things I love, and then I will sell them or trade them to other collectors, or I will, if I eventually open a gallery, I'll be dealing them to customers. But I do that so that I can have more funds to buy more stuff that I like. And I think this is the best way to do it. So here we have, I'm diluting it down. So I'm diluting this down. I'm trying to get rid of the lumps. See, the nori paste does have little lumps in it, but I'm trying to get rid of those. So I'm just going to kind of scoop them out. They don't hurt anything if you happen to accidentally end up with them on the print. They're just kind of a bummer to get out. So I basically do this. I take the lumps out as much as possible, and I end up with a nori liquid. It is still nori paste. It's just been diluted. And I find that it just works a lot better for putting these small patches that I'm mostly doing on. I have done some larger size patches, and I'll try to find a picture of it. If I do have a picture, I'll put it over here somewhere so you guys can see the before and after of my most ambitious repair, which turned out pretty good. I mean, again, I'm a lay person. I'm not a professional. I don't do this as a job. This is just something I do so that my collection can stay whole. Now, I think that we prepare these and repair them and make them ready for use and viewing, so that they are just, the reason for conservation. I don't know how conservationists feel, but this is how I feel as a layperson. When I say layperson, I mean somebody who's not a professional. But for me, it's about having somebody who comes to look at something I'm, showing or displaying or selling or whatever. I don't want them to be like, wow, look at that big hole. I want them to be like, wow, look at this amazing clean print with the scene and whatever. And while you might be able to look up close and say, oh, there's little holes that were filled here, you're not going to notice it from this view once I fill these holes. You're just going to be like, wow, look at this great print. And you're not going to focus on the fact that there's 20 holes at the bottom. And that's what we're trying to do. We're not trying to, repair this so that it's brand new in appearance. I mean, maybe from afar, people won't notice it, but that's not the reality. I'm not that level of a conservationist. And even though I have some level of art skill, I still am not a professional conservationist. So I do this to maintain the integrity of the print, to make sure that whatever damage there is, like there's another hole over here, to make sure that whatever damage there is isn't going to go worse. I don't want it to get worse, and I don't want people to look at it and go, wow, look at all those holes. I don't want that. So I'm basically, fooling, if you want to say. I'm tricking the eye because I'm making it so they don't focus on the things that are wrong with it. And that's what you have to do at this level. Now, these holes happen to be in a really great position as well. So they're fantastically located on white some of the time, which makes it very easy, because once I put the backing on here of the washi paper, you won't even mostly be able to see it anyway. I won't have to paint it or do any infill of painting. Some parts up here, I will have to do infill painting, and I'll be covering that in a different video. So for now, I'm just going to focus on doing the patching of these holes. Now, the last thing we're going to need in order to start this process is washi paper. In order to make these repairs, you need to use a like type of paper, preferably as close as you can get. Now, I've selected this one in advance because I think it's the closest one that I have available to the print paper we have here. But I also have these leftover prints that are not in good condition. Now, if I wanted to, I could actually just pull these white parts off that are here, that are probably very closely matched to this white that I have here. So we have the white here, and if I wanted to pull away this white right here, you can see the holes just disappear. Okay, I could just do this if I wanted to use this print for the repair. But I don't want to do that because I am saving it for later. Plus, for the purpose of this video, this actually works better what I'm doing now. So I do have these kind of leftover prints that have been damaged. And while some of them you might think, wow, it looks amazing, believe me, they're damaged. And I'm not sure if they're repairable much. So I keep this. So aside from having the prints, the leftover prints, I also have a bunch of washi papers. Now, these are different kinds. Some are from books. Some are from just leftover washi sheets that weren't used. Japan is producing washi paper constantly. They have their own washi, producers that are still active. But these are mostly from old books. So I try to buy books that are from the same sort of period where I'm going to be mostly making print repairs from. And then I try to find one that's going to leave the least amount of residual. I don't want it to be lumpy from the back. I want the color to match pretty well if possible, especially if there's areas like those light areas or those white areas. I forgot to say, one of the advantages to using the old prints, I only used white as an example, but look at all the different colors on this print. I have green, I have orangish, I have red, I have black, I have blue, I have all these different colors. I have yellow. Well, I don't have very many yellow, but there's some yellow here. So there are very different colors, that we can actually tear little pieces off and glue them from the back, and I don't have to color match those then. Now, a lot of dealers repair the things themselves doing this, but they don't get the right color, and I find that those don't look great to me. As a matter of fact, I have a lot of prints right now that I've gotten over the years that have these repairs where someone is like, well, it's not exactly red, but it's orangish, so I'll just use that. And while it's true that as a quick look, it's less than a whole, I don't find them to be very appealing myself. Now, the advantages are it's the same kind of ink from the period. It's the same kind of paper from the period. So it is very easy if you can find a matching color. But anyway, that's the other reason I keep these old prints to use on this, because of this reason that I can rob Peter to patch Paul, so to speak. Okay, so in any event, I have all these washi papers. So I typically, what you want to do is once you realize which print you want to work on, you kind of feel the texture. You want to get reasonably close but thin because you don't want it to be like lumpy from the back, which prints often are. It's just the way it goes. I know people don't always have the perfect thing to use, but you want to find a washi that's going to work for you. I have many washis here to choose from. Again, special thanks to my friend Peter, who gave these to me one time when I was visiting his house and talking about repairs. So that was very nice of him. Thank you, Peter. And otherwise, I just have a bunch of these, which I can use at some point to help me with patching. For today, I've already selected the piece of paper I'm going to use because I have enough to do these holes, and I think it's the right consistency and the right thickness. Although, I did want to try this one. So I'm actually also going to try this. Now, this is washi paper from an old book. I just wanted to give you all a quick show that if you find old books, oftentimes there are just words and they cover some esoteric topics that you may not be interested in. This one happens to have some prints and stuff, but all this margin paper here can be used to patch these holes or to make supports or to join a ripped piece of paper. And these are very thin. This is a very nice paper to use, especially for enjoining two pieces of ripped paper. So if you have a paper that has a split in it, using one of these nice thin pieces, it would be really barely even noticeable from the back, and it wouldn't be noticeable at all from the front. So just a thing to keep your eyes out for. If you're ever in a shop somewhere or an old bookstore and they happen to have some old Japanese books that you find, check them to see if the paper looks like it's decent quality. And if it is, you can use the blank areas in that paper to make patches. I'm going to try this one. This paper is a much finer quality. It definitely is washi. I don't know if you guys can see this at all, but washi typically has lines running through it that you can very easily see. And it's like a fibrous kind of paper. The fibrousness of it is part of the reason we need the washi to begin with. So the reason that we're going to use the washi is because the fibers help it stick to the paper and stay in place. All right, so I'm going to begin doing the repairs now. We still have some lumps in here that I would like to get out, but they're proving elusive for me to remove from here. But it's okay. As we go, I'll just try to move them out as one by one as we get through this. Sorry, I'm umming a lot because this is an impromptu video that I'm just doing from scratch. Hopefully you guys are okay with it, and I hope you find it helpful. I'm sorry it's taking so long, but this is something I'm going to be discussing at length because I want to make sure that people who do this get as much of the facts as I can offer. Okay, so give me a minute while I zoom in here. I want to zoom in a lot closer so that we can see the area that we're working on. I'm even going to lower this down a little bit. I apologize for the wiggling of this, but I want you to see that the area I'm working on, and actually I'm probably going to turn it this way so you all will have a good view of what I'm doing right here. So we have the two washi papers. We're going to be working from the back. So basically we're going to flip this over, and now I got to change it around again. We're going to flip this over and we're going to work from here. And we're just going to run right up the side, filling whatever holes we can find. I will show you how I do it each step of the way, and I'm going to do it the same thing over and over again. So you'll have a chance to watch it. You don't have to stop it and rewind this video if you want to see exactly how it's done. I'm going to be doing it over and over. So you'll see the same thing repeated over and over, 15 or 20 times. All right, so here we go. Let's begin. I have my watered down washi paper. I'm going to lightly put this on here. Now, I find this to be more than adhesive, enough at this kind of like watered down level. You do want washi in here, of course, but you want it to be, in my travels, I want it to be very, very liquidy because it's just easier to use. All right, so here we go. We have our washi paper here. Our subject washi paper. We're going to tear off a small piece like so. Now, the one thing I want you guys to pay attention to is, do you see how there's all these little fibers around the edges here? These are crucial to making this repair, okay? You want to make sure that the fibers are here because those little hairs around the edge right there, those are what are going to allow you to glue your paper to this other paper and make sure it's strong enough to stick. These little fibers will make it stand very strongly. So I'm going to start down at the bottom here. Now, another thing we're going to discuss while I start this. So first, let's do this one, and then I'll get into this. So here, I take my brush, I put the paper on. Oh, first I'm going to pick a hole. So we're going to start with this lowest. You guys can see this, right? Yeah, we're going to start with the lowest hole right here. I'm going to put a little bit of nori paste around the edge right here. Okay, now I'm going to take my paper here and I'm going to be putting it around the edge like so. Okay, so now I've wet the hole where I'm going to place it, and I've wet all around here. Now I'm going to make sure that we're going away from the piece of paper with those little fibers because we want those fibers to stick to the other paper. Okay, once I have this on my finger like this, I raise it up like this on the edge. I put it on the brush like so. So now I have it mounted to the brush. I go down to the hole I want to cover. I place it right on top like so, and then I brush away from the edges of the hole towards the paper so that we make sure that when the hole gets covered and those fibers dry, that they dry covering as much surface of the paper as we can, okay? Now, you're probably thinking, well, why don't you just tear off a big piece and cover that whole section? The reason is I'm trying to do as minimal amount of invasiveness to this print as possible. I don't want to damage anything. I don't want to leave a bunch of like square pieces of paper on the back. When you look at the back of a print, you don't want it to look like that. I don't anyway. And so I take the extra effort to do it piece by piece. If you want to do that when you do it, A-okay, go ahead. I don't think it looks that great, so I don't do that. Again, I've torn another piece here. I've got a little piece of something. I don't need that. But I tore another piece here. I'm gonna wet this and put this away from the print. Away from the hole rather, away from the center, let's say. I'm gonna wet this down. My hole is wet here. Now you guys may not be able to see this, but there's actually a very small hole right here. So this piece that I'm doing right now is gonna be for that hole. I don't think it'll cover both of these holes, although I'm gonna wet them just in case it can. But I don't think it can, so probably it's just gonna be for this one small hole. Yeah, I don't, actually it does cover both. So there we go. So now both holes are covered by a single sheet, just like so. And yeah, it looks good. So I'm going to keep moving on. So one thing I do want to talk about, okay, as I do this, again, you're just going to see me repeating the same thing over and over. So I'll try to talk about other things that might find interesting. But one of the things you want to obviously be very careful of is the color red. Earlier I mentioned the color red, it's so fugitive, red and purple. Now, I don't mean purple from the 1790s. That purple, it's a very different purple. And that purple, I don't even know, honestly. I don't collect prints from the 1790s because I don't find them. They're just not that available. Mostly museums or large private collectors have them. Again, I've wet this around the edges. I'm going to place this on this hole, and I'm going to lightly brush away while pressing lightly down on the hole, over the hole, and Just going to keep laying it like this one after the other. So what I was saying is that most of those early, when I say early, I mean early, like, 1800s prints, or not 1800s, sorry, I mean 18th century. So prints from the 18th century, this is 1790, their version of colors were mostly vegetable dyes. I mean, I think they were probably all vegetable dyes. And those vegetable dyes, they actually are very color fast in water once they dry. At least that's been my experience. Now, that doesn't mean all of them. People say the pink can be fugitive, which is what they call these. They say the colors are fugitive. And when they say fugitive, they mean that they can be damaged easily if you put water on them, especially. It means I don't know why they use this term fugitive, but to me it means that the color can transfer fairly easily, and because it can transfer easily, you want to be very careful not to get water on it. Now, aniline dyes, like I was saying, they came into effect around 1860s. I think it was late 1860s when they came into use. So 1868, something like that. Now, by the 1870s, they were very prevalent in a lot of the prints that were happening. And especially once the Meiji era arrived, there was a lot of these red prints coming out. And you'll see them often, if you're attracted to that red color, there's a lot of them to enjoy. They're just really, really great. They're readily available. But the problem you have to worry about once you start collecting those is to really be careful for the bleeding of that red. So like these prints that I'm working on right now, or this print I'm working on now, they came from an album, and a lot of those prints also were added to albums. And the second water or even wet nori paste hit them, it causes bleeding, and it really, really, damages those prints in a lot of ways. So this print, because it's pre-aniline dye, or at least aniline dyes weren't used, and I'm sure this is pre-aniline dyes, because of that, this print is not going to have that problem. It's not going to have a problem of me putting this me putting this wet paper down on here. It's not going to cause the inks to bleed. The paper, it's vegetable dye, and the vegetable dyes just don't have the same. Well, I don't think I wet this hole yet. The vegetable dye is just not going to have the same problems. Now, I'm not saying you're not going to lose any of the dyes. So a lot of people maybe don't even know this, but you can dunk an entire sheet of paper. Of print. You can dump an entire print, a woodblock print from some of these earlier eras. You can dump the whole thing right into water, and it will not really damage the print. When it dries up, it'll be basically like it was beforehand. So yeah, but you want to be very careful. So my point overall is, what you really want to do in those instances is you want to test the color fastness to the paper first. So you want to take a Q-tip or a cotton swab, and you make it a little bit damp. You don't want it to be wet. You just want a really light amount of dampness on this cotton swab. And then you'll just find an area along the margin, preferably something that's not in an important part of the print in case something does go wrong. But just something in the margin, along the edge, something nondescript. You don't want it to be anywhere near the action of the print or someone's face or anything like that. You want to try and do it somewhere close to the margin. And you just take that Q-tip. Let's say we were going to test this area right here. You take this Q-tip, and you just dab it a little bit like this. And that, if the color comes off, then just stop. Like, you don't want to go any forward, because this stuff spreads so easily. There's really no easy way to deal with those. I don't mess with those. I actually don't collect prints from that era typically. Or if I do, they're Kuchi-e, and the Kuchi-e don't tend to use that red very much. Very infrequently, actually, which is kind of interesting, because there definitely was a period where, in the 1890s, where those reds were still very popular on the prints that were being published for like kabuki and so on, and cultural prints, the ones that depict scenes from like circuses that would come to town, or Yokohama A prints, the prints that showed the primary import city at the time, which was Yokohama at one point. Those Yokohama prints had a lot of the red that was used. So you just want to be careful that when you are, using any print, any kind of patching for a print that has red on it, you want to be very careful that is not going to ruin what you're working on by adding water, because it only takes a tiny bit to ruin a print. Now, one of the things I was saying about Yoshitoshi's prints, when he first started, they were not made during a period where the aniline dyes were used. But later on in his life, and some of his best series, in fact, or his most, let's say the most dynamic series, and especially some of the war prints, they used a lot of those red colors because they were popular and because the uniforms were red sometimes. And those prints often also come in albums, and I don't know if they were albums created by, I'm going to do this kind of long wormish, this longish worm mark, hole, trail, if you want to call it, right here. And I'm going to use a piece that's shaped a little bit like it. Oops, sorry, wrong stuff. And so, the Yoshitoshi prints often have a little bit of bleeding because it's very difficult to separate those things from an album. If you get an album that's back to back from this period, you're pretty much out of luck. You're not really easily going to be able to get those off. Whereas an album from this period, you could actually, if there was backing on it, or if you needed to separate them from back to back, sometimes they're glued back to back. Thankfully, I wouldn't have bought an album if I knew that was the case, unless it had like Hokusai Maofuji's in it or something really impressive. Just because it's not worth the amount of trouble it takes in order to fix those is very, very extensive. It's a lot of work, and it's not the kind of work I don't feel confident doing. I feel like that's requires a lot of effort. So it has to be a really amazing set. Now, Yoshitoshi has some really amazing sets that are like 100 series of 100 phases of the moon, or 100 scenes of the moon, or whatever it's called, 100 moons, let's just say. Those are often broken up and from albums, and sometimes they do indeed have the issue. I'm gonna pull this down a little bit, so the bottom edge is going to be coming off, but I need to do these upper holes here. Now, these are more incorporated where the colors are, but again, I'm not worried about it with this print. This print, the colors are not going to be transferring once I put the water. Once I put this liquefied nori on here, it won't leave much of a mark at all on the other side. There is going to be a small raise in the paper. You can't help it. You're basically adding, extra paper. So of course there's going to be a small hole. A small raising up, a small rise in the paper, I would say, from the back. So if you feel around, you'll see it. I usually take a lot of extra effort in mine, so I try my best to make it look like it matches. So I'll even, so most of these prints where the color is, most of these holes where the colors are, I'm going to actually come back with watercolor and a very fine brush, and I'm going to infill them with matching color. Now, some people may not feel confident with their art abilities to do this. I'm pretty decent at color matching, and so I don't have a problem doing it. And I am like I said, I'm an artist and I use watercolor quite a lot. So I'm pretty confident in my ability to make that match and make it look good. So here we go. So let me just show you real quickly our progress. I actually dabbed a little bit of water over here, which is not my intent. But let's show you the progress really quickly from the front side. So you can see it doesn't look so great at the moment because it's damp, but you can see that we filled all the holes. So the holes are not evident any longer. And once this dries, you will barely notice that these have been even repaired at all, which is what I was showing earlier. So now you've seen me doing these. Let's take a second and I will show you that other print again, and you guys can see how it looks when it's dried. It's amazing, actually. So there you go. These were both done exactly the same way. Okay, I didn't change anything at all. This is exactly how I did the last video, and you'll see that they're barely noticeable, the difference. Now, of course, if you're focusing up on them, you say, "Oh, I can see them." Well, again, that's not really the point. The point is not to make a perfectly, amazingly, nobody can tell it from the original kind of patch. That's not the level of conservation I'm teaching here. I'm only showing people how I do this. If you want to try it on your own, totally up to you. But I want to show people it's not as terrifying as you might think, as long as you follow some steps and make sure. But you can see that this is what it's going to look like at the finish, So anyway, I think it does a satisfactory job. I don't think anybody is going to see these and go, "Oh my God, someone did a horrible repair on these. These holes are awful." And believe me, I've had some really horrific repairs in my collecting days. And those repairs, If possible, I undo them and I just redo them myself. Excuse me while I take a drink. I do my best to try and match the original. So let's try this thinner paper. I haven't actually tried this yet. It is not as fibrous because it's not as thick, but it still has fibers, as we can see. So let's give it a try. It's actually a little bit thinner, so it might even work a little bit better. So let's give it a try and see how it works. But this is how I do it. I try it out. I see how it's going to work out. Is it going to work? Is it not going to work? I don't know. Sometimes you just have to do trial and error. The reason I originally started doing these repairs was because I found a book by a woodblock print collector slash scientist, or I don't know what he was. He was somehow involved in the sciences. I'm not sure what his actual title or whatever it was, but he made a book that was about repairing Japanese woodblock prints, and he did it as a collector. So this is from the collector standpoint. I have the book here to share with you all in case you're interested in getting a copy. This is the book. The book is called The Care and Repair of Japanese Prints. It's by an artist. It's by an author whose name is Karl Schraubstadter. Now, there are two versions of this book. Well, maybe there are 20 versions. I don't know, but I've noticed at least two. There's a version by Karl Schraubstadter, and it doesn't have this line underneath here. And then there's a version like the one I have, which says with an addendum by Dewanda Randall. Now, I highly recommend that if you want to try some of the things outlined in this book, that you get the addendum version. The reason I recommend this is because the person, Dewanda Randall, she is, I believe she's an expert. I believe she's an expert conservationist. So she's come back later. Here's what it says. So it says, so the addendum is crucial in my opinion. So here's it says, let me just read the back to you all. A small but invaluable book for all collectors, museum curators, and scholars who constantly handle Japanese prints. Karl Schraubstadter, one of the prominent early Westerners to collect Japanese prints, first published this text in 1948. The current wide interest in Japanese prints among beginning and advanced European collectors has made this little text long out of print and extremely useful. I paid $75 or $100 for this book when I bought it, just so you know. But I've seen it on eBay for as low as $40, so I know you can find it cheaper even maybe. But let's look at the next paragraph. Many new conservation methods have been introduced into the care and repair of Japanese prints since the author's text was originally published in 1948. The publisher, therefore, has included an addendum by Dewanda Randall, a prominent contemporary conservator of Japanese prints and the executive director of the Asian Conservation Laboratory, Incorporated. The addendum includes changes in technical terms, chemical names, and more up-to-date procedures. That last part is the most important in my opinion. So this book covers a lot of great topics. If you're interested in really delving into how to care and repair Japanese prints, it covers demounting. So that means let's say it comes from an album or it comes from a frame. So it's been in a frame. It covers removing from a frame. It covers removing from a mat board. Stripping, which I think this stripping probably means taking away tape remnants and stuff like that. Covers spots and stains. Repairing inlays or invisible patches. I would love to learn how to do that. I think it's a fantastic topic. It's where you take the nori and you take the washi and you somehow scrunch it up into little tiny bits and you make almost like a paper paste out of it, and it kind of walks you through how to do that. So when you're patching a hole, it can almost look like it's paper and the paper didn't change, and then you can just infill it or whatever. I find that fascinating. So I'd love to try that. It has bleaching, one of the areas you should definitely be aware of not trying from the book. Straightening, Mizubari, which is fulling or shrinking, so making an enlargement. So if you wanted to add, probably that's if you want to add margins to a print or something like that. Mounting the print, cataloging, it just has a real nice dearth, a plethora, lots of information on how to care and repair Japanese woodblock prints. I think this book is invaluable to dealers and collectors who are going to be long-term and who plan on doing repairs and of their prints themselves. So definitely worth looking at. Unfortunately, there's no ISBN number on here, so I don't have any way to give you guys an ISBN number. But I think you can find the book just by the title. I'm sure there's some available on eBay right now, probably. Care and Repair of Japanese Prints, Karl Schraubstadter. But yeah, the one with the addendum, I would definitely get that. Okay. Okay, moving on. So anyway, I learned a lot. So I read this. I found this book at my local Moe's bookstore in Berkeley. Shout out to Moe's. And they have a nice section, or at least they used to have a much better section, but now that books have become such a less collectible kind of thing, you know, I have hundreds of Japanese woodblock print reference books. I think they're crucial. A lot of people don't seem to care about things like books anymore because the internet is so out there and ubiquitous that people think you can get all the information from the internet. That is absolutely not true, especially when it comes to Japanese woodblock prints. Western Japanese print collectors from the late 19th, early 20th century, they published a lot of books. I mean, there are books covering basically all topics practically. And when you are working with those woodblock prints all the time, having those books to look at reference prints, to find examples that don't exist. You know, if you search a print online, you may come up with an image for a lot of popular prints. It's true. You know, there is a lot of information online, which I love. I mean, here I am literally adding more information online. So it's not, I'm not going to say I don't love it. I do. But also I feel like there is a bit of a gap too in what's available and what you can get by, what the knowledge you can get by reading reference books. So when I started collecting, as almost equally as passionate, I was collecting reference books. And when I came upon this guy's Care and Repair Japanese Prints book, I was like really wowed. I was like, wow, I can't believe somebody actually made a book that is specifically about caring and repairing for Japanese woodblocks. Like, that is amazing. And I really love that. So I bought it for the 75 bucks or whatever I paid. And it's been invaluable to me. Now, it started me down the road of trying to do not bleaching. I would never try to bleach a print necessarily, but trying to remove some toning from prints. You know, anyone who does long-term collecting will, you know, invariably buy a print that's from a frame, and then you'll realize, oh, as soon as I unmount it from this frame, I see that there's, you know, there's mounting lines or burn marks or toning overall on the whole paper. And you're going to think to yourself, well, I'd really like to try and fix that if it's possible, because I love this print so much, or it's a rare example and it really, you know, it's worth a lot of money and whatever. There's lots of reasons to try it. But what I want to say about that is you definitely want to ensure, you know, that you're not trying any kind of extreme bleaching agents, because while it might work over the time, it'll probably dissolve those. Into nothing. You know, something like bleach. Like if you took straight bleach or, you know, industrial strength hydrogen peroxide, you're risking damaging the fibers of the paper, and that's something you definitely do not want to do. So yeah, I definitely would not recommend trying that. Honestly, I tried it and it did not work out well for me. I did lighten up one Hasui Kwase print that I was trying. It was a beautiful print. It just had like a toning that I didn't like in it because it was an older original first edition print. And so I did try a very, you know, delicate, light version of making that repair. And basically it was just, I did buy an industrial strength, hydrogen peroxide, because the kind that comes straight out of a bottle is not strong enough to make a difference. But you definitely don't want to get that industrial grade hydrogen peroxide and just dunk it straight into it. Like, it would probably just dissolve the paper over time. So you don't want to do that, but you do need something that's a little bit greater than what you could find at the pharmacy or at your regular like Safeway. So yeah. And I have tried both. I'm not going to lie. I tried both. I had a bottle of the regular kind you get at the hardware. Not the hardware store. Well, maybe at the hardware store. But anyway, because the industrial strength kind you can buy at a hardware store. I don't know what it's used for, but I know that is available at Home Depot and the like. So, gosh, you know, one of the problems with these is when you put them down, they slide. So you have to make sure that you're making sure they're centered on your hole. Otherwise, you might be done and realize you missed the hole completely. For this side, oh no, I missed one. Yeah, so I'm going to make sure I get this. There's one right here. Sorry, can you guys see all these? I'm doing the best I can to keep this in frame, but I keep having to move it around. So I apologize for any movement around the edges here. But yeah, so anyway, I do recommend trying things. You know, if you have like those leftover prints like I have, the stack of leftovers, it's a great way to try some of these repairs. You know, I mean, there's no reason as collectors that we shouldn't try things. But again, disclaimer, I'm not recommending you try this on your brand new Hasui Kawase that has a tiny hole, because if you ruin it, it's going to be impossible to repair back. I mean, you're going to have to hire an actual conservationist, and that is very expensive. Conservationists are amazing. I think the work they do is absolutely crucial to the conservation and mending and long-term life of not only woodblock prints, but all kinds of art. I once had a painting that I purchased from an artist that I really loved named Barry McGee. And this painting rather, was something that was removed from a street. So he had put it up in the street on a bus stop shelter, and the person, some person had come along, and instead of just like, well, I don't know how they got it off, but whatever it is, it involved breaking the glass of this bus stop shelter, because it was something where it was painted on top of an advertisement. But when the guy did it, he slammed a brick through the glass to get it out of the container that it was in, the case that it was in, and he put a gigantic hole in the piece. So it didn't touch the art. So the great thing was the art was not damaged at all. Now in this case, because I have this large hole here on the side, I'm going to find a piece that already has an edge that's straight, so I can try and align it here. In this case, I do not want the fibers. I just want the piece to line up along the edge easily. So I'm going to do my wet here, and I'm going to wet this piece. But I found a nice piece with a straight edge. If you don't have a straight edge on the pieces you're using, just take some scissors and cut it along a straight edge first, so that it just makes it easier to attach it. But in any event, that painting was quite valuable and quite expensive if it was repaired. Now, like I said, the artwork wasn't damaged. The advertising that it was on this thick advertising plastic. It was damaged, and that damage, to repair it, it cost me almost $6,000. Oh, whoops, I missed. So you can see I missed the hole greatly on this one. So let me move that back into place. But yeah, so you definitely, conservation can be very costly, but it is absolutely crucial if you're working on something that is of a high value. I think it's crucial that you have a conservationist do the work. Doing it yourself risks a lot of loss for very little reward that I can think of. So I recommend definitely having conservationists do any major work. I had a conservationist do that work. I did not do it by myself, and it took 2.5 years to complete. But when it was done, again, I wasn't expecting it to come out brand new when it was finished. I just wanted it to be that when you looked at this amazing piece of art by Barry McGee, that you were not focusing on the giant hole, that you were instead focusing on the face. I mean, it had this face painted on it that was like 25 inches across, and you definitely don't want to have somebody walk up and look at this 25 across face and be like, oh, too bad it has a big hole. That's the last thing you want somebody to say on a painting you spent $20,000 buying. So yeah, no, definitely worth it to do the work and have a conservationist do it. And yeah, so this is the finished thing. I know it's hard for you guys to see it because it's wet and nothing's really been shown from the side. Let me zoom back out a little. So here we can see all the spots I made repairs. They're easy to see. They're still a little damp. They're here, and here, and here, and here, and here. I did some on this side. Basically, we've done repairs on all sides at this point. Now, later on, I will come back. Oh, I missed one. Huh. Did I miss it? I did. I missed one right there. So see, you got to come back after and look from the other side to make sure you didn't miss any. I did miss one right here. So let me just fix that real quick. And then the next time we return to the next video I'm going to do, it's going to be about infilling. Some people may not enjoy that video and think that you shouldn't do infilling. I disagree. I don't think it's any better or worse. I know for a fact that dealers in Japan, I don't mean all the time and routinely, but I know some dealers in Japan and some dealers in the US, they just paint right into their prints. So, I'm not saying I know anyone who does that, but I have definitely heard people have done it, and I've seen prints where I've gone, that doesn't match at all, like what's going on right there. And I could tell they just took Sumi and blacked it in. So I know that this happens. Maybe this is, Oh, that's what it is. It moved. This one right here moved off the. So yeah, so we have to be careful when we're doing this, that we get it in the right spot, and then it covers up where we are intending to cover, like that. Okay, so I didn't actually need this extra one. So yeah, so this is how we do it. So I appreciate everybody. If you're stuck around for the entire hour, I appreciate your time. And I apologize, this is taking a long time, but I wanted you to be able to see me doing it over and over and over again. I know one of the things that bothers me when people give instructions is they don't give clear enough instructions over and over again so you can see what they're doing. Again, huge disclaimer here. I am not an expert, and I'm not telling you to do this. If you want to do this, it's going to be on your own. See, look at that. I just put my hand down on here and I removed one. That's how easy it is to like remove these if you're not careful. So I'm going to leave this to dry. There is actually, you can actually just take a blow dryer and blend dry these when you're done. You don't have to wait for them to dry by air. As soon as I leave here, I'm going to go into my bathroom and I'm going to dry them. Now, how you blow dry these, sorry, let me rephrase this. You choose to do this on your own if you wish. How I blow dry these is I take them into the bathroom and I hold them this side out and I put them against the mirror. So I put them against my bathroom mirror, okay? And I make sure this is flat and flush. And then I hold the blow dryer about 5 or 6 inches away on low and hot, and I blow it. Now listen to me very carefully. If you do high and the air comes under the edge of your paper here, you can easily rip your print. So be very, very careful. You can also just leave it like this to dry in the air and it will be just fine. But if you're impatient like me and you want to hurry it up, I sometimes do this so that I can start the painting process or whatever in one go rather than having to wait 2 or 3 hours for this to cure and then coming back and doing the painting at that point. So that's sometimes how I do it. Again, I'm not recommending you do that. If you don't feel confident, then please don't try that. I'm saying this is what I do, and I do this because it works for me. It may not work for you, and I don't recommend you do anything that makes you feel uncomfortable or you think it's going to damage your prints. I'm only showing you what I do. If you choose to try this, it is of your own accord and at your own peril if something goes wrong. I don't think it's that easy to find the washi paper, honestly. So that's one of the parts of this that I think is probably the most challenging. The washi paper part, yeah, it's not really that easy. Like, I have this stack. Like I said, my friend Peter, who was a dealer for 45 years, maybe more at this point, or 30, 40 years or something. He's been in business forever. 35 to 40 years. Like, he's been in business for quite a long time. He's the one I got these from. And, I didn't have as many on my own. What I was doing was, like I said, buying those books. I would go to old US-based bookstores, and they invariably have a foreign language section. And it's amazing how many books you'll find in Japanese that are just sitting on the shelf, and they're like $2 or $3. So, you can buy them and you can use that washi, which could be as much as 200 years old, to make these repairs with, and it works quite well sometimes. So anyway, that's my advice on how to repair through simple means and at a layman's level, non-expert, to repair these Japanese woodblock prints. Again, from pre-1860, let's say, and you should always check your print with a cotton swab and a little bit of damp water on the edge. Very damp, okay, not wet, not soaking wet, a little damp. You test the edge and you see if that red comes off, okay? You can, by the way, regarding this repair right here, I don't know if I'm going to repair this or not. I probably will, but actually when these prints are mounted, they'll be mounted together. And the middle part actually gets covered up by when the prints cross over each other. I probably will come back and do it. I didn't think it was necessarily for this print to do, for this particular video to do this. But for that, for doing something like this edge, I'll just explain it really quick. Again, you want a flat piece. So I probably would take this, I would cut it flat, and then I would just cut a very thin strip and paste it right along here like so. Okay, and then it would just match up like that. It's actually really simple. You just put it on there, same way you do the holes. But cutting it flat up front makes it a lot easier to try and line it up. Coming back and cutting it with scissors later is less easy. You can also do it that way, though. I've done both. So yeah, the other thing I want to mention is they do make archival book repair tape. Now, I know a lot of people use this sort of tape, and I have used it too. It's very easy to use. You just pull out a little paper strip and you tear it off, and then you honestly, it's not that easy to get the little adhesive paper off. But anyway, they're made for repairing books, and they are archival and acid free. However, This type of paper does very well in a lot of ways. One of the ways it does not do well is with Western adhesives. Western glues and adhesives can ruin a Japanese print so easily because this paper is very fibrous. If you put something that's sticky, like an American duct tape, you're not getting that off. Like, unless you have a conservationist do it, or somebody who's an expert at removing adhesives, something like that, you're not getting that tape off. That fiber is going to lock into that glue that's on that tape, and you're not getting it off. That kind of glue will also over time start darkening. If I put a piece of duct tape right here, and then 10 years from now, there's going to be a square of dark brown, whatever, because the anti-acidic nature, the acidic nature of like that kind of glue is definitely going to be harmful to the print. So yeah. So anyway, you can use that tape, that archival tape, like I'm saying, for small edge tears. You know, if you have a little tear that's here, that's like a 1/4 inch right on the edge, and both the pieces of paper are still attached, and all you're doing is sealing the line of where the page is cut, you can do that. That's not a problem. Honestly, it's not even a big deal. I do it. Other people do it. Like I said, the tape is archival, and it can be used for this purpose without causing a lot of damage, which is really what we're going for. The problem I find with those little edge tears, especially if the paper has gotten remotely brittle at all, is that they get much, much worse over time. And once they get worse, you really can easily rip that paper a lot worse. Again, as I've said before, I use folios to store my prints in, so I'm often sliding them in and out. So if I have a folio and the paper's like this and it has a little rip on the side and I'm sliding it into that plastic, all it takes is that paper to get caught on the edge of that plastic, and that plastic will cut right through that paper. Absolutely. I've done it before a couple times. So you have to be very careful, and having those edge tears like that are where they get caught. So just be mindful if you're going to use, rather than doing this, because you don't have to do this, and a lot of people don't even have the washi to do it. But if you're not going to do this kind and you want to try the other kind, the brand, I'll put a picture here. So you guys will see a picture here of that brand if you want to try it. I do use it. I'm not saying I don't. I think for little small edge repairs, it's perfect. I think for a long cut like this, it's dangerous because it's almost impossible for a long piece like that to be easily removed once that glue dries. So once you put that adhesive on, well, it is archival and it is acid free, so it won't brown the paper supposedly over time, which is nice. The one thing it's not is easy to get off this fibrous paper. So yeah, so just be really mindful when you're using those kind of products. Anyway, that is it for my video today. I hope you enjoyed this. I will be doing a second video in this series where I come back and I do the in painting. And I'm going to do a full video repair for the print I showed you with the heads in the trees. That print is amazing, and it has like 40 or 50 heads in the trees. It's like a giant battle scene, very dynamic, and it does have a lot of heads in the trees for whatever reason. So yeah. Anyway, everybody have a great day, and I hope you enjoyed this video. If you do, please like and subscribe. I'm almost to 50 subscribers, which, doesn't sound like a lot, but to me it's a lot. And I hope every one of you is a fan and you love woodblock prints as much as I do. Have a great day.